Wouldn't it be kind of cool to learn about the history and evolution of fungi and to know about the fossils? Turns out there are a lot of fossils of fungi. Sort of side guidebooks for, they're not mushroom guides per se, but these are books that I get asked all the time by people like, oh, isn't it too bad that there's hardly any fossils of fungi? Wouldn't it be kind of cool to learn about the history and evolution of fungi and to know about the fossils? Turns out there are a lot of fossils of fungi, not so many of mushrooms, but there's an actual whole book on fossil fungi. And if you want to know about the history of mycology and the evolution of fungi, this book is a must-have to get in your library. It's the only one that's ever been put together, to my knowledge, on fossil fungi. It's not super cheap because it was printed by Academic Press. So this, I bet it'll set you back $100, but it's well worth it. It's literally a compendium of all that's known about fossil fungi and all of the different fossils and all of the different scientists who've studied them. So super cool book. Here's an example right here in the middle of one of the fossil mushrooms, and that's David S. Hibbett, and these are pictures of mushrooms that were stuck in amber. So there have been actual mushroom fossils, not so many. Most of the fossilized fungi are not mushroom forming fungi. Anyways, this is a British trio put out this book. So that's kind of neat. Side book for people that want to geek out on mushrooms. If you're into truffles, believe it or not, there's been a guidebook of truffles, and this is put out by Jim Trappe and the North American Truffling Society. A very small book. It's not super expensive. This says $17, but this is all the truffles in North America. And I actually know a lot of people that have this book because you do encounter truffles when you're mushroom, and nobody knows what the truffles are. If you're out looking for mushrooms in the woods, you'll sometimes see on the forest floor little chips of mushrooms, and if you dig around, sure enough there's truffles, and you bring it into a foray and everyone's excited. No one knows what it is. Well, this is a way to know. So this is a good one to put in your bag for when you're traveling around. It has all the groups. It works for the West, the Southeast, the Midwest, etc. The North American Guide to Truffles by 10-Speed Press. Here's another little bitty book that is super useful, the field guide to the lichens of the Northwoods, and this works for the West as well as the Midwest and the East as well. It's best suited for the Midwest, but there's not very many small guidebooks on lichens, and this is my favorite one. It has all of the groups in the Midwest, as I mentioned, with really nice photos, brief descriptions, and even some interesting little tales, and also some things in the front about the evolution of lichens and what is a lichen. It's a community of organisms and how they work. So this is kind of a neat book, and it came out by Colath and Stanislaus, a publishing group, which is in Duluth, Minnesota, I believe. They've made a couple other books that are favorites of mine. If you're really interested in lichens, this brand new book, I'm not even sure if it's out yet. It's coming out right now. If it's not out right at this moment, it will be by summer or fall of 2024. This is in the series by Princeton University Press. It's the same series that published my Lives of Fungi book. So The Lives of Lichens, A Natural History by Robert Looking and Tony Sperbill. This one's all about lichens, and it's absolutely spectacular. It was published by Robert Looking and Toby Sperbill, and it has glorious photos inside, big features on lichens and their associations and physiology, illustrations of how lichens work. It's just super cool, and it's like the prettiest book ever. And the price is not very much. There's a book that came out a couple decades ago that's a massive lichens book. It's really expensive. It's like $200. It's a masterpiece, but this one for a lot less money, I think, is in many ways even better and really, really well written. I really love it. So this is from the Lives of series by Princeton University Press, which includes the Lives of Fungi, the book that I published, and they have others in the series on beetles, moths, butterflies, a bunch of things. This one, in the one on fungi, but this one might be the prettiest one. The photos inside are just spectacular. The photos are just really cool. Robert Looking used to work at the Field Museum for quite a while. Now he's back over in Germany. So he's probably the one or two world's authorities on lichens. And this co-author Toby's the scientist who very recently discovered that there's another type of a fungus that's inside the lichen that's really the puppet master for the whole thing, kind of a yeast that nobody's ever seen before. He was able to detect using molecular biology and the DNA. So the question with the lichens that's always been fascinating is that a lichen is a community of organisms. It's a fungus and a photobiont or two photobionts. So a fungus plus an algae, or a fungus and a cyanobacterium, or in some cases, all three. And they exist in nature separately. You can take them apart and even grow them in the lab separately, but you can't put them back together and reform a lichen and have them make a lichen again. No one can figure out why. And people have tried for decades, maybe centuries. And the reason why is because that's not all of the organisms. There's actually other organisms in there that nobody knew about. And this guy Toby came along and found, oh, there's a yeast. When you slice through a lichen different ways and look under the scope, you'll never see it because it's in such small amounts. You never see it microscopically. But if you were to grind up the entire lichen and tease out the DNA, there's DNA of the cyanobacterium and of the fungus and of the algae. And there's DNA of something else in there, a yeast. The yeast, although it's the smallest part of this lichen body, it turns out it's the most important one. It's the puppet master for all of them. This was just discovered. Who knew? And it was by Toby, the co-author of this book. So pretty cool.